Kia ora koutou katoa, bonjour, hello and welcome to those of you here and all of those joining us online. My name is Jacqueline Philpott and I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Film Commissioners International, otherwise known as AFCI. I would like to welcome you all here on behalf of our team, our board and our global membership. This is the first time that AFCI is part of the official program at the Marché de Film, and I would like to give special mention to Anahit, Nino, Maud and Guillaume for their support. A big thank you and welcome to Mark Spivey of Higginbotham, our presentation partner. Thank you, Mark. This LA-based organisation has over 50 years' experience ensuring feature films worldwide. Higginbotham partners with producers to provide custom-tailored insurance solutions to meet the unique needs of each project, whether they are shooting in the United States or another country. Their clients are also provided access to internal legal counsel for contract review, claims advocacy and other risk-related recommendations. They know time is money and their streamlined processes ensure quick turnarounds so filmmakers can focus on what they do best, creating cinematic masterpieces. AFCI was started in 1975 in the United States of America and is the only global non-profit organisation representing state, regional, provincial and national film commission members worldwide. While this month marks nearly 15 months I've been in the role of Executive Director at AFCI, 2024 marks year one of a multi-year transformation journey to not only bring industry closer to our film commission members, the unique and diverse regions, but to encourage further collaboration and innovation globally. We champion advocacy, connectivity and education, empowering film commissions and industry partners to drive economic growth. We also provide essential guidance for emerging regions looking to establish commissions, essential connections and networking. So some housekeeping for today. We have 4 panels today over a 3-hour slot with a reasonable quick turnover, so unfortunately we won't have time for Q&A. However, if you stay till the end, 1 o'clock, you might have time to catch up with one of the panellists. You'll see some QR codes between slides. You can scan these and sign up to get updates from AFCI. These updates are going to include the full report from Olsberg SPI, which we'll discuss shortly, around best practices in screen sector development. You'll learn all about AFCI Week coming up in Los Angeles in August, where you can connect with over 120 of our Film Commission members and mix with other industry colleagues, including major and independent studios. And finally, receive details of the diversification of our membership to welcome independent producers as official members of AFCI for the first time later this year. Last but not least, for those attending in-house here and online, you'll be sent a special discount code to access AFCI Week and the membership. Okay, let's get down to business. Today, the panels we will bring you will highlight advancements in screen sector development, the importance of collaboration, explore location-based authenticity, discuss location stereotypes, and highlight cultural inclusivity. I'd like to welcome Leon Forde, Managing Director of Olsberg SPI, to the stage to provide an overview of the 2024 update to a 2019 report commissioned by AFCI on best practices in screen sector development. This is used extensively by film commissioners, policymakers and industry partners worldwide. Olsberg SPI is an international creative industries consultancy delivering high-level strategic advice, insights and business planning for their global client base. A think tank partner of AFCI, their advice is welcomed by film commissions, global studios and government agencies, amongst others. Leon will be joined later by Claudia Triana, Director of Proy Mejanes, Colombia, who features as a case study in the report. Claudia is a powerhouse with 35 years working with the Colombian film industry and has taken her place on several juries worldwide and acted as executive producer on several productions. Thank you, Leon. Take it away.
Okay, hi, good morning everybody. It's great to be here this morning, and thank you to Jacqueline for that kind introduction. It's fantastic to see this world of film commissions and international production policy right at the heart of this film market. It's long overdue. So I'm going to be talking you today through some key findings from a study that we're publishing today called Best Practice in Screen Sector Development. And we've created this work with our partners at AFCI, and we're very grateful for their collaboration, and thank you to Jacqueline and to Marge and to the AFCI team. So I'm going to be talking you through some introduction, some context about the work and about the industry landscape we are currently in. I'm going to give you some reflections on what we mean by best practice, and then I'm going to give you the high-level findings in terms of the best practice that the study identifies. So as Jacqueline mentions, this is a piece of work that we first published with AFCI in 2019, and really at that time it was the first study of its kind. It was about looking into this rapidly expanding screen sector that we all work in and finding ways to identify policy and strategy and other interventions by government and policymakers, and really looking at what was best practice there, what was driving sustainable and healthy growth in these sectors. 5 years on, we're in a very different landscape. The growth is still continuing, but we've had many more challenges. We've had the global pandemic, of course, but also, some economic headwinds that the sector is now facing. So really, it was a good chance to step back and really update this study, really, take a really fresh look at what global policy, what global strategy looks like in this sector in today's landscape. So we've undertaken a full rewrite, a full redo of this study. And today I'm going to give you a very quick high-level overview of what we found. There's a QR code at the end of this deck, and there are some QR code flyers on your way out where you can download the 60-page key findings deck, and that's going to be published in 11 different languages, including Korean, Japanese, Spanish, Portuguese, and a number of others. The idea being that this is a study that can be used to give to government stakeholders and policymakers around the world to really show them what best practice means in developing our sector. The full study has a large number of case studies, so as well as best practice findings from our perspective, we also really dig into how different jurisdictions have managed the challenges we're going to be talking about and the opportunities. And Claudia from Pro Mejenes will be joining me for a short Q&A to talk about how Colombia has implemented best practice in incentives. So in terms of context, this is a sector, as we know, that has been growing very, very rapidly, particularly on the scripted television side, but also in terms of feature film production as well. What's clear is that there are economic headwinds hitting our sector. There's been some retrenchment of investment. We've seen some production cost inflation, some macroeconomic challenges hitting screen production. But what's also clear is that growth is still out there. And turning what you see on screen is some data from Ampere analysis, and really looking at the next few years, there is continued growth in our sector. And interestingly, a lot of that growth will be coming from regions or markets that aren't yet fully mature. So thinking about sub-Saharan Africa, Central and South America, Central and Eastern Europe, these are all markets with expansion and clear expansion potential. So when we think about best practice, there's still a lot of runway to keep developing and building our sector, including in the mature and established markets. So what do we mean by best practice? Well, we identify 7 areas in the study: production incentives, workforce, physical infrastructure, film friendliness, diversity, equity and inclusion, sustainability, and partner engagement. And really a healthy screen sector, a healthy screen production sector is an ecosystem in which all these pieces of clockwork work together and make that a healthy jurisdiction. So it's really about how all these pieces fit together and about how policymakers consider these different areas in driving their sector. I'm not really going to go into it today, but we also look at ineffective practice in the study. So what are the things that stop healthy growth? What are the things that might put growth backwards? Before I get into the findings, we consider best practice through both formal and informal considerations. The formal are the pieces of legislation, the pieces of policy, the funding structures, the guidelines that really provide a framework for an industry. And the informal best practice is the reduction of friction. So the areas where productions can be made quickly and easily without too much difficulty. As we know, productions are very high risk, they're very costly, they need to move very quickly, and any kind of informal processes or procedures that help drive that and reduce that risk, reduce that cost for producers is what we mean by best practice. So to run through headlines of these 7 areas, and as I say, the full study is available through the QR code at the end or on the flyers, and I would encourage you to download it. Starting with production incentives or automatic production incentives, these have been a key policy development in the last 5 to 10 years. We've seen a real increase in the number of production incentives being offered from about 85, 86 in 2017 to, as of this month, there are 116 incentives on offer at national or provincial or state level. And they're critical both for international projects, but also for national and domestic projects. And we've seen some recent data from the European Audiovisual Observatory looking at the importance of incentives in European film financing. Their data showed about 21% was coming from incentives on average. So what do we mean by best practice in incentives? Well, given what I was just saying about the cost and the risk associated with production, for an incentive, it's about clarity and it's about stability. There's a huge amount of money at stake for producers, and having an incentive that delivers what it promises, that pays out on time, is absolutely critical. Money, borrowing is very expensive. We've also seen, incentives can be very flexible models, and we've seen a lot of expansion in areas like uplifts, so incentives offering additional value for producers who hit certain strategic marks, if they shoot outside of an established hub, for example. And I think best practice here is just making sure there's clarity and making sure it's clear what that uplift is there for, and making sure it's clear, making sure that uplift delivers what it's meant to strategically. A couple of thoughts on administering incentives. It's important, obviously, that the incentive authority is managing the applications robustly and checks and balances are in place, but it's also important that it's responsive and that response times are rapid. Budgets and caps, a lot of systems operate with them, and again, making sure those limitations on what's available for producers are clear, and if there are limited funds, making sure producers understand how they can fit within a system to access them. And finally, effective rate. I'm sure it's clear to everyone, but the marketed rate of an incentive isn't, in the most part, what producers actually receive. It gets depleted by certain caps or certain disqualifications on eligibility. So I think that clarity point, being clear with producers how much is actually going to be netted out to them by the incentive. The next point is workforce. This has been an absolutely critical focus for our sector over the last 5 years for a number of reasons. One reason being capacity, and the fact the amount of production we've been seeing has created tightness in many markets. We do a lot of work in this area. I think it's critical for workforce strategy to be targeted and to be very, very aligned with industry need. So really looking at where the gaps in the industry are, where the gaps in crew exist, and really tying a strategy in to deliver on that. And as I'll say when we come to the DEI slide, making sure diversity is totally not an afterthought, that it's absolutely baked into strategic development, strategic processes. Also, a key thing here, not just focusing on new entrants, but being aware that there are ways of bringing in skills, bringing in expertise from adjacent industries that can really short-circuit some of that development time for new entrants. Data, maybe not the most exciting subject for a Sunday morning in Cannes, but making sure that data is absolutely in place and underpins the development of strategy. It absolutely has to be informed by data, and that's a big challenge for the global screen sector. Often national statistics don't enable us to look with great clarity at crew or lack of crew or where crew gaps exist. So as a film commission or as an authority, as an institute, trying to put in place data tracking and data insights that allow you to develop workforce. And finally, cohesiveness. I think it's true for all of these best practice areas, but a lot of this involves public agencies, private companies, suppliers, producers, and just making sure that strategies are bringing all of those voices together to be effective. Infrastructure, the third area, like workforce, a very pressing issue for a lot of markets. I think in a well-functioning screen market, often developments in this area are driven by the private sector in response to clear commercial opportunities. And I think there's a role for public sectors in best practice terms to think about how they can facilitate the private sector here, how they can encourage them to consider the screen sector, and that can be done through non-financial support. So thinking about helping them through planning regimes or zoning regimes and what have you. That said, we do see governments and public authorities investing in studios and other infrastructure, and I think the key best practice point there is about timing, and often studios can be looked at as a way of quickly short-circuiting development, which they can be, but they also need to be underpinned by the other areas we're talking about, particularly workforce and a stable incentive. And then, of course, sustainability is absolutely critical in this area. Turning to film friendliness, another key area of best practice that we look at. This is really about how a market, once a production lands, how this market makes life easy for the production and enables it to deliver the economic and the other benefits that productions can deliver without friction, without difficulty. And for film commissions, for other agencies in this space, it's about building that consensus. It's about helping your partners understand why dealing with a permit request or dealing with a request for a location on a rapid track is a way of getting value, is a way of building economic spend and strategic value. That sort of understanding piece is a key one here, and I think in successful examples in the study, we see film-friendly networks, we see film commissions drawing together different stakeholders to help them be on the same page when it comes to servicing, and also areas like immigration, customs, tax, the importation of equipment. DEI is an absolutely critical question across our industry, and it's an ongoing focus. I think for this study, in talking about best practice, is absolutely about, again, integration into workforce development. DEI should never be an afterthought. It should always be at the center of any and every workforce development strategy. And as I say, not just thinking about new entrants, but also thinking about sideways movement, sideways skills into the production sector. Again, data totally critical in informing good policy making in this space. And then, of course, authentic representation on screen and off, and engagement with community. Obviously, some communities will be outside of established networks in the film production business, and it's absolutely critical in bringing those communities into those networks. So again, in building strategy and building policy in this area, it's about bringing together, bringing cohesiveness. Just penultimate slide here on sustainability. Again, another totally critical area that's been expanded in this version of the study from 2019. I think best practice here is absolutely about finding sustainable practices, sustainable methods that can fit within the way a jurisdiction works, the way a production sector is used to working, so that it can fit within those processes and enable producers to adopt those ways of working without too much difficulty, without too much change, and that way it becomes sustainable. Resources and materials, again, film commissions have a key role to play in helping stakeholders and helping suppliers understand what they could be doing as a business or as an individual in this space. And also incentivizing change, driving change through incentivizing, whether that's through an incentive model or through other ways of driving change. Just finally, the final slide here before I wrap up is on partner engagement. And as I said at the start, it's a hallmark of a healthy sector that government, that public agencies, that private companies come together and understand that this is an extremely valuable sector that delivers across a range of metrics, including economic, strategic, cultural, and really that's about, to get to that place of cohesiveness is about engagement, and it's about strong and robust evidence, and making sure that stakeholders understand the value of this activity and understand the value of them supporting the activity. Repeat engagement is really critical. We see so much churn in governments, and we're in such a fast-moving geopolitical time. We're in a fast-moving industrial space that engagement has to be redone and redone and redone to show those changes. And the final point I make is about innovation. Our sector is one of the most innovative in the world, and we should be harnessing those skills that we have in this sector to make the message that we need to make to partners and to governments in the most innovative way. It's important to show the economic case, but it's also important to show the story of impact that this sector has, the way that money hits economies, the way that money moves through economies, and also on a cultural level, the impacts that filmmakers and that productions make on how countries and regions feel about themselves, how they engage with the world, and how they project themselves with the world. So thank you so much for listening. This, as I say, was a very rapid highlight reel, if you like, through what is a very detailed study with a lot of case studies. And please do scan the QR code, or there are flyers over there with the QR code. So thank you. And I'd like to welcome to the stage Claudia Triana from Pro Imágenes, Colombia. Claudia. Okay.
Hello.
Testing. Okay, can you hear us? I think these are on. Claudia, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing some of your expertise. As I mentioned in the full study, there are a great many case studies of jurisdictions and how they represent best practice in some of the areas we're identifying. And Colombia is very much a model of best practice in the development of incentives. It's certainly a standout production market in Latin America. You offer two incentives, one rebate model and one tax credit model, and you've seen a real expansion in activity through those structures. And I wonder if I could just ask, if bearing in mind the best practice discussion that we're having, how what have those incentives done for Colombia, and how have you developed them at Pro Imágenes in a way that has allowed them to deliver the impacts?
Well, thank you first of all for the invitation. It's an opportunity for Colombia to showcase a little bit of our little experience, because just to give a very brief overview, in 1997 we released one film in the cinemas, and we had to start from there. We need to do production. So there are like 3 laws that we've been constructing as a system of incentives for the local production and co-production, and then to foreign productions to come to Colombia and do bigger creative things. So in 2012, once we had like 30 films going on in Colombia, we started with the cash rebate. Because we were saying from 2007 we were the National Film Commission, and we were starting to say, okay, we have 2 oceans, we have the Andean, we have all the climates, etc. But we needed definitely the rebate. So there we've been doing like 52 international projects, and we've been learning, our crews have been learning with bigger productions. And during the COVID, we started with a new incentive, a transferable tax credit. That has been like a revolution, because it's, first of all, our fund, the cash rebate was only for films, and then in 2019, and it was ruled in 2020, we started with what we call SINA, which is the Audiovisual Invest certificate, and it's designed like it's sustainable, the operation and everything. It doesn't come from the national budget, the money or anything. Just the government approves like a coup for the next year, and then in Proimágenes, which is, we are a non-profit private organization. We have public stakeholders and private, but we do the contracts by the private way. I mean, we do a private contract with the international partners, and everything goes around us. I mean, we do the submissions, we do the evaluations, we go to the committee as a technical secretary, and we also give back the cash rebate or certify to the Ministry of Culture to give the certificate. So in a way, it's been like the best part of the private and public joint venture to make it easier and clearer and give confidence to the international people who comes to Colombia.
So that sort of point about cohesiveness, it feels like you're, through that system, you're bringing together different entities within the space. And I wondered, thinking about, you mentioned the tax credit has been a kind of revolution in attracting international projects. I wonder, just for anyone in the room who doesn't yet have an incentive in their market or is considering this, how they might go about this. I wondered, are there any hallmarks of your system that you would think are sort of elements of best practice that you would suggest to someone, this is what we've kind of done right, so maybe this is maybe a challenging area that you should think about?
Definitely, I will recommend the private and public organization. I mean, permanency, it's really, really, really key. I mean, we had 25 years Proimágenes. I have the honor to be the same director, even though the government has changed several times. So it's key to have the permanence. That's one. And the other thing is that also, if you have a private way of of the system, you can pass the year. I mean, if we have the funds, it's not 31 of December. You have to have all the films done or the things done, but we can pass. I mean, a project can apply in 1 year and stay until the other. So that's another key thing, to have a private someone being there.
Yeah. And I'm interested in, it's quite unique that you have two models, and it feels like they've been impactful both for the domestic production in Colombia and very helpful for domestic producers, and also on the tax credit side, very impactful for the international business. And you sent me some data that I think there was something like $632 million in tax credit spend from, I think, the second half of 2022 to this year. And I wondered what reflections you have on having systems that both work for national production and for international. Do you see those systems as sort of targeted separately, or is there overlap?
Well, one of the, I think that it was very intelligent to do, and the government accept that, was that this system of the SINA is, you don't have money. I mean, the internationals that have a discount of 35% of their expenditure in Colombia have to give 5% of his title, of the tax transferable credit, to us. And with this money, we're paying all the operation of the system, and also we're doing a training program. So that was like a dream we had, that to do like a training to be more competitive and have more crews and more trained skills in Colombia, but we didn't have the money. Now we have it from the system, so we're designing this national plan, and we hope that you still go to Colombia so that we can have some money from the Colombians. So that's the way the Colombians will say, okay, you're giving incentives to the foreign people, but they are also, giving some money for the national training, and that can go to also to do better national films and co-productions. So we're in that stage, because it's been only 3 years, as you said, and for the first time we had like $632 million spent in Colombia in that state, and 170 projects coming, foreign projects coming to Colombia. So we were like, now we need more crews, and now we need more, and the industry is moving, and we're learning a lot, and we're always adjusting to be, as you said, more clear, more easy, more sustainable, and things like that.
Now that's so interesting, and really aligns with what we found in the study about the cohesiveness across different areas of development. And it sounds like you found a way through the tax credit to really support the development of your workforce, and to do that in a very sort of clear way that isn't onerous for those producers using the tax credit. As shown by how much production is coming to Colombia. So I think that's a real kind of best practice highlight right there.
Yes, and we are learning a lot, because now we have like 40 companies that are already working and doing their work to promote also the country and their services, and we're starting to have more IPs from Colombia. That's our dream also, not only to have services, but also to do our own IPs there. And we're starting to have screenwriters from Colombia, and having like the confidence of the streamers and big international companies that are now feeling that we can do things for the region, not only for Colombia, but for the region in Spanish, and that we can also be more productive in the future. So we're, as I said, we're learning a lot, and finally every government with difficulties, of course, that we have to work with them every time they do like a tax new bill, which is almost every year. We have to deal with trying to stay with this incentive that has been not only for films, as I said, but for series, for video games, for advertising, for video clips. So we're mainly in films and series, but now we have animation and a video game. So we have to work a lot still.
Yeah, and I think that's from the study as well, that sense of there's still so much more policy runway and strategy, and there's so much still being done. It's kind of underlines why it's such an exciting sector. Well, I think, Claudia, that's all we have time for this panel, and thank you so much for sharing your insight from what is a fascinating market in Colombia, and thank you so much, and thanks everyone, and thanks to AFCI.
Thank you.